Hello, dear friends, with you Naya. Today I'm going to tell you about a rather new and interesting fashion. It is called the PrimalCore, which can be translated into Russian as a primitive basis. It adds us a whole lot of new blocks, some kinds of new animals and plants, and new devices. But most importantly, it changes the gameplay for us in the early stages of the game. The PrimalCore mod will be of interest primarily to those Minecraft lovers who appreciate mods that bring the gameplay closer to realism. In other words, this mod focuses on the early stage of the game in primitive technologies and makes the world of Minecraft more complex and unforgiving of mistakes. As for me, I love such fashions very much. This mod is constantly evolving and has already fallen in love with many. Unfortunately, I have hardly met any players in the Russian Minecraft community who would appreciate this modification. There is critically little information in Russian about her, which I consider absolutely undeserved. Moreover, there are already several very well-developed templates for it, which I will tell you about in separate videos. Well, today, I will give you all the necessary information so that you can start playing with this mod. When you first appear in the world of PrimalCore, you will very quickly discover that you can no longer cut down trees with your bare hands. Well, that is, you can, but you get damaged at the same time, and the logs do not fall out. But you also need to make tools to survive. What should be done? The Primitive Foundation mod has changed the mechanics of creating tools and a workbench for you. Now your first tools will not be wooden, but silicon or bone, depending on what you can find earlier. But let's start with silicon, because it's not always possible to find bones on the first day. We need to find the gravel and dig it. In principle, flint falls not only from gravel, but also from earth and sand, but this is a matter of chance. From gravel, we can get flint by folding 2 blocks of gravel like this. We got the flint. Now we need sticks. They can be obtained by destroying foliage, but this is not enough. In addition to sticks and flint, we need something else than to tie the blade of the tool to the handle. And for this we will need vegetable fibers. Just plucking the grass, you will get these things that look like roots. These are the fibers. Now you can start making your first tool. Roots and flint in the form they are not suitable. They need to be processed first. We put the roots in this way, in our craft cell, and get a string. And the flint needs to be split into smaller pieces. To do this, we need some kind of hard surface, or rather any kind of stone. We take the flint in our hand and beat the left mouse button on the surface of the stone. The result is these flint fragments. Do not overdo it, so as not to split them into even smaller fragments. Of course, they will also be useful to us, but later. And now we take a stick, flint and twine, and fold it like this. Hooray! We have a hatchet. This is still an inferior axe, but with this thing we can already cut trees without harm to health, and even get wood. The next thing to do is a workbench, because the crafting inventory cell is not enough to create other tools. So I chopped up a little wood, put it in a crafting cell, and nothing happens. I can't get the boards. But because you can't get boards with your bare hands, to do this, you need a tool, at least the same hatchet. That's how we can already get 2 boards from each log. But we will not hurry, because to make our first workbench, we do not need boards, just 1 log and a hatchet are enough. If you put a hatchet to the left or right of the log, you will get a workbench, and not a simple one, but a Korovsky Prim. And by the way, it's even better than vanilla, for a number of reasons. First of all, the crafting components do not fall out of it if you left them in the workbench. In addition, they are displayed like these beautiful 3-dimensional things on the surface. And he also has his own 2 shelves that can also store items, which is very convenient, especially in the first stages of the game. Well, another bonus of this workbench will be appreciated by all lovers of beautiful design, because it leaves the color and texture of the wood from which it is made. Look, you can have a variety of workbenches, and that's cool. Now, having a workbench, you and I can make all the other tools, namely a real axe, a pickaxe, a hoe, a shovel, scissors, a saw, a working knife, and a machete like this. Don't confuse it with a sword. This thing hits mobs so-so, but quickly destroys foliage and plants. If you want to beat mobs, it's better to use an axe. It has more damage. Just to create other tools, you may need those very small pieces of flint. I will immediately make a small digression and tell you about the bone tool. If you are lucky enough to find a bone, then you can make the first tool by analogy with silicon. Take a bone and also hit it on a hard surface like a flint. Get a piece of bone and a pointed bone. It can be used as a weapon, but it's weak, so it's better to hit it again and get another piece of bone for tools. Like silicon fragments, bone fragments can also be broken down into even smaller ones if necessary. All crafting tools are the same as silicon ones, with the exception of a real axe and a working knife. They are not in the bone version. And in general, all bone tools are a little weaker than silicon ones, but they will do for a start. And I warn you right away that you can't mine iron with a bone pickaxe, only silicon. In general, the silicon pickaxe replaces the stone vanilla. By the way, there are default crafts of vanilla tools, starting with stone. There are no wooden ones, but this can be changed in configurations at your discretion. Since we are talking about tools and their creation, I must say right away that the PrimalCore mod adds to us a number of tools that are crafted using a similar technology, namely quartz, diamond, emerald, opal. By the way, obsidian is also added by the mod. They all have different strength and different production levels. The only difference is that these resources are more solid and will not split into stone. They need to be beaten against something harder, for example, obsidian, but to split obsidian, you will have to make a hammer first. This is not difficult to do. In principle, a stone hammer is also suitable. We use it to break obsidian into obsidian fragments in the inventory. And now we are already hitting these fragments on a hard surface, just like everyone else. Now, I will explain to you how to use some of these tools. We'll start with a saw. Craft it like this. We need it to get the boards. Of course, we can get them with an axe, but with an axe from one log, we will get only 2 boards, but a saw will give us 4 at once. But this is not its only use. With it, we can cut wooden objects back to the boards. For example, chests, boxes, workbenches, doors, boats, and so on. Vanilla crafting sticks no longer works, but you can get sticks using a saw directly from logs or from boards, which is more convenient for you. Semi-blocks can also be obtained with a saw, and although vanilla crafting is not removed by default, it is still more convenient to make semi-blocks with a saw. The saw also participates in some original crafts, for example, barrel lids, ventilation grilles, and so on. The hammer, it is needed in order to crush. You can crush a lot of things. For example, all stone blocks are crushed into stone. Sandstone and its derivatives can be converted into sand. Brick blocks are disassembled into bricks. Of the nice bonuses, horse diamond armor can be broken on a diamond. By the way, horse armor is now being crafted. The hammer also participates in some original crafts, which will be discussed later. Well, I just have to mention that if you play PrimalCore with his Adon Keats fortune craft, then you will need a hammer in the forge. A working knife. This tool is made like this. We need it for a number of crafts. For example, carved blocks, cutting vegetation into fiber, leather into straps, for seed extraction, for crafting arrows, processing hides, butchering meat, disassembling horse armor saddles, creating stairs, rooting from trees, disassembling wooden objects into components, although with less efficiency than a saw, and all sorts of other little things. With a working knife, we can work not only in a craft cell, but also in the world. For example, and it is possible to cut down steps in the earth, the infernal earth, or in stone. To make earthen steps, you need to either right-click on the usual or on the pathway ground in the squat. It doesn't work on the grass block. You can also cut down a ladder in a stone. This is done with the right mouse button in a squat on a stone. It turns out that such a ladder, another working knife, can sand a log, but we will consider this a little later. By the way, it's a similar story with a hammer. In addition to the crafting cell, the hammer also works in the world, and the crafts in the world are like this. That is, you can hit these blocks and get these things. For example, breaking a pumpkin, you will get pieces of pumpkin, and breaking magma, you will have basalt magma, one of the liquids added by the Prime Crust mod. Another tool added by the mod PrimalCore, metal scissors or wire cutters as you like. They are only made of iron and quartz. They are made like this. We need them in order to cut metal and wood into small parts, which in turn we need for crafting. We talked about the tools, and now let's talk about the extraction of fire and everything related to fire in the fashion of PrimalCore. They say there are 3 things that you can look at endlessly: how water flows, how fire burns, and how a person works. And if water is nothing unusual in the PrimalCore fashion, then the extraction of fire can easily turn into a whole ritual. Making a vanilla lighter is now problematic at the initial stages of the game, even if vanilla crafting remains. It's still a real waste to throw iron right and left. If you have already developed enough, then you can make 8 lighters from 1 piece of iron at once. To do this, you will have to flatten an iron ingot into a plate. Keep in mind that a stone hammer is not suitable. You need at least a quartz one. We cut the plate into strips. 8 strips will come out of one at once. Well, from the strips, it is already possible to make a crystal again with a hammer, adding a large fragment of flint. We get a lighter. But what if there is no iron, and we need fire right now, this minute? We will extract it with primitive technologies, namely friction. To do this, we will craft this kind of onion kindler. It is also called an Indian violin. To do this, we will need any 2 sticks and twine. All this can be obtained with bare hands without any tools. As you can see, you can fold a fire bow. In the crafting cell of the inventory, even a workbench is not needed. In principle, you can already set fire to this thing. There is one but. It does not ignite from every click. Often you need to click it properly. To do this, just take the Indian violin in your hands and right-click. But it will not work to set fire to grass and trees. We'll do something more interesting with you. Let's build a fire pit. To do this, we need a block of gravel, any shovel and any hoe, as well as sticks and labor. To begin with, we will treat the gravel surface with a hoe, right-click. The surface has changed a little bit like that. Now we take the shovel in our hands and right-click again. Now we've dug a hole. We throw labor to the bottom of the pit. It is easy to make it from vegetable fiber, which falls out of the grass in abundance. And we put the sticks up, like this, with the right mouse button. All that remains is to light our campfire. I'll tell you right away, in order for the fire to be properly engaged, you'll have to tinker a little. Sometimes it doesn't work right away, and sometimes it does, and goes out after a few seconds. Just throw the right mouse button into the fire labor and repeat the procedure until the fire is stable. PrimalCore makes another important change to the gameplay, namely smoke and soot. Any gorenge is now accompanied by the formation of smoke, which then settles in the form of soot somewhere in the neighborhood. You will have these dark gray spots appear on everything where it is to dig the sediment. In addition, if you burn, then at least the same torches in a confined space. Then sooner or later arrange a smoke trap in your lair. This puts a blindness effect on you. To avoid this, Do not forget to make ventilation holes. And so that mobs do not jump into your chimney, the Prime software mod adds special ventilation grilles of two types, namely shutters and fireplace grilles. The main difference between them is that some pass only vapor particles of smoke, and others also objects. Fireplace grilles are so thin. They are made of different types of wood. They only let smoke and vapors through. They craft like this. Thicker dampers are made of different stones, except only this one. It can be made from PrimalCore's reed. Objects can also fall through the open flap. Both of them look aesthetically pleasing and are very useful in this fashion, since they perform the role of ventilation and can also isolate boilers from heating sources. The Prime mod gives us a pretty realistic interaction with fire, as well as a new torch and lantern. The crafting of an ordinary torch has changed. Now you are not just folding a stick with a coal, you also need to tie them together with a string. Moreover, torches are not immediately lit. They need to be lit. This can be done from any kind of lighters or from another torch already burning. Also, be careful with torches. Now standing on the same block with a torch has become dangerous for health. You can easily catch fire from it yourself. In addition to the usual ones, we can now make torches from Nazareth. The craft is simple. 2 hellish stones, one above the other. Agree, it's very convenient. We can also craft a flashlight, but of course we will not succeed in the early stages of the game. We will have to develop a little. In this flashlight, we can stick any kind of torch, whether it is ordinary, Nazarite or rodstone. Jack's lamps can now be lit and extinguished, which is certainly a nice addition. Speaking of the window, it is necessary to mention the fuel. There are a number of types of own fuel in the PrimalCore fashion. Some of them, such as paraffin, can be obtained simply by running around the world. But there are some that you have to create yourself. For example, charcoal. Although vanilla charcoal still remains by default, it will not satisfy all your needs. Coal in fashion varies in quality, and the quality depends on the kind of wood from which it is made. The quality of coal is very important in the metalworking process. And if you have Adon Kitsis fortune craft, then high-quality coal becomes simply vital. So let's learn how to mine coal in PrimalCore fashion. First of all, we need to chop wood, birch, and you will give us coal of the lowest quality. Oak and dark oak give medium quality coal. Acacia, spruce is good, but the highest quality coal will give you the wood of iron or tropical trees. Here I have to make a reservation. Not all coal from a certain wood will be of a certain quality. It's just that the percentage of high-quality coal from high-quality wood grades will be much higher, but you will still get coal of a different quality as byproducts. And now we have chopped firewood. Now we need to root the logs, that is, peel the bark off them. To do this, they must be installed in an upright position. Then we take a working knife in our hands and, sitting down, click with the right mouse button until the bark flies off the log. Sometimes you need to poke several times. By the way, do not throw away the bark. It will still be useful to you. The sanded logs need to be cut into logs. This is done again with the right mouse button, but not in a squat and already with an axe. As a result, we get these pegs. We need to put them in a workbench in a wood pile. Now we lay the wood pile on the ground and bury it with earth. We leave only one lock open. We need to set it on fire in any way, since you already know how to set it on fire. As soon as the smoke starts, immediately close the last block. Otherwise the firewood will burn into ashes, and coal will not work. There inside the hole, the fire itself will spread to other wood piles, and you will only have to wait. As soon as the smoke particles stop making their way through the ground, you can dig out your coal pit. If you make a mistake and something else is burning in the pit, just quickly close it back. It may also happen that not all the wood piles will burn out. It's okay, wait again and close. Well, our logs have burned down. Let's take a look at what we got. These coal stacks were made of teak and birch, that is, according to the developer's definition, the lowest grade wood, and that's what they're called, stacks of low-grade coal. Let's analyze and see what kind of products we will get from them. Of the 9 stacks, we got more than a stack of vanilla coal, which is the worst in this fashion, and with a small chance, we got a little bit of good quality coal. We look further, and a medium quality Spaniard, that is, oaks. We got mostly good charcoal and a little vanilla. Now let's analyze a woodpile of good quality, that is, from spruce and acacia, and we get, for the most part, good quality coal, but there is also a little bit of top quality coal and a little bit of average. And finally, we disassemble the coolest woodpile. In it we burned iron and tropical wood. As you can see, they did not burn in vain. The coal, for the most part, turned out to be of the highest quality, and there was very little admixture of good quality coal. So now you know what kind of wood you need to burn to get certain grades of coal. But moving on. We have tools and fire. It's time to think about food. Let's talk about the flora and fauna of Fashion Prime Co. Indeed, this mod adds quite a lot of new plants and animals, and also changes the color from vanilla animals. Let's start perhaps with plants. A lot of plants in Fashion tend to germinate themselves. Their roots remain in the ground and grow back after a while. Tree seedlings that have fallen to the ground have a chance to germinate if you do not pick them up, shot from the foliage of tree sticks, and wheat seeds no longer fall out of the grass. To get seeds of plants, including wheat, you will have to use the same working knife, which I have already told you about. The names for many plants are chosen rather strangely. They look like Latin ones, but often in fact they are not. The mod adds 2 new types of wood, yew and ironwood. Yew is a fairly common tree with beautiful wood, which has pronounced annual rings. A number of items can be created from yew wood. However, as a source of coal for metalworking, it is of no value. Ironwood. It grows randomly in the ordinary world. It is quite rare. Its wood is very valuable because it gives the highest quality coal. A number of crafts are also available from this wood. To set fire to the wood or foliage of an iron tree, neither lava nor a lighter will work. However, the dragons from the Icefy mod are able to incinerate it. I could not translate the name of this plant properly. It turns out something like a whale's carfree and a bird's one. What does this thing have to do with whale birds? I never understood, but anyway, let's just call him carfree, especially since it sounds funny. So, carfree is a narrow palm-shaped trunk, originally growing in hell. There is a light visible on its top, but only if it grows in hell. In the ordinary world, it is not visible, despite the fact that it is called a plant. In reality, it is nothing but a giant annelid worm, a sessile pahita in a tube. Its rigid segments can be remade into material resembling boards, which can be used to create a number of objects. It is planted as a larva on a solid surface. It can be germinated with bone meal. It is not recommended to stand on the top of this trunk, because there is a risk of catching fire from it, while the effect of blindness may also be imposed. Reeds. They grow everywhere, most often near the water. However, this is not necessary. Give stems, seeds, tops and flowering tops. From the latter, you can get seeds and plant them, but it will not work to germinate with bone meal. Reeds are needed for various crafts, including reed hatches and ventilation, as well as blocks, semi-blocks and thin slabs. Corn. One of the fashion plants that has nutritional value. It is quite rare to find wild corn. I came across corn seeds in the process of fishing. When using bone meal, flour is spent on the corn sprout, but it has no effect on the growth of the plant. So corn, like many plants from Motto Prime Co., grows at its own pace. The grown corn is a fairly tall plant, 3 blocks in height. It gives you ears like this, from which you can get seeds. Well, they can either be planted again or ground into flour and baked corn bread, which restores 2½ bones of hunger. By the way, the raw cob is also edible, but it restores only the half of the starvation bone. If you fry the cob, then it, like bread, will restore 2½ bones to you. Corn tops are also not useless. They can be dried and made into paper. Fullus omnifram vallis, the all-suffering, aka hell corn. This plant will initially spawn in hell. It, like ordinary corn, can be cultivated. To do this, you need to plant the seeds on the infernal bed. The infernal bed can be made on the infernal earth, a new block that is generated in hell. Plow the infernal land, and the garden is ready. Infernal beds, like ordinary ones, need to be nourished, but only unlike ordinary beds. Hellish ones need to be fed not with water, but with lava, and the depth of recharge is not 4, but only 2 blocks. The strangest thing is that the infernal beds, despite the fact that they are not powered by water, for some reason are fueled by rain. Bone meal will not help you in the accelerated germination of infernal corn in any way. After some time, such a thing will sprout from your seed. Its height is as much as 4 blocks. From it you can collect fruits, which are literally called Volusa vodinia. This fruit can be eaten raw. It will restore you 1½ bones of hunger. It can also be converted into seeds or made into bread from it, which restores 2½ bones of hunger. In addition, Vallis gives flowers from which you can make fiber and tops, which are suitable for crafting paper in Russia. Morning carrots or infernal carrots. Like infernal corn, you can grow it on infernal beds. Bone meal has no effect on growth. In hell, in the wild, it occurs in single plants, rarely in groups. They grow up to 2 blocks in height. The roots form a root crop that looks like this. Cooked can be eaten, will restore 2½ bones of hunger. In its raw form, it gives a drying effect for 10 seconds. The tops can be collected and used in some crafts. For example, it can be used to get fiber, seeds, a mixture for bricks, paper, and in Russia. When harvesting, be extremely careful. The carrot tops prickle and slow you down. Cygnar sweet. The name of this plant can be translated as a wavy or serpentine weed that grows in the lower levels of hell, mostly next to glory. You can grow spores. Spores can be planted in the uncultivated infernal land next to glory. Grows up to 3 blocks in height, gives fiber. Flowering plants produce spores rich in dark resin. The devil's tongue, a rather rare and beautiful plant of bright yellow color, up to 2 blocks high. Initially grows in hell. When destroyed, a sepal falls out, which can be converted into a seed and planted on a hellish bed. So far, it doesn't have any function other than decorative, but even if it doesn't, I really like it. Hell horsetail initially grows in hell on almost any surface. If it is harvested, the roots will remain in the ground, and it will sprout again after some time. Hell horsetail pasture is very fond of hell aries, but we will talk about them separately. Adult plants try to push away unwanted guests and all foreign objects. Be careful when traveling through hell. There is a risk of ending up in a lava lake or falling off a cliff due to the fault of this horsetail itself. At the top of the horsetail, there is a flower with a light, which in itself looks very beautiful. However, the light is visible only in hell. In the ordinary world, the horsetail seems to be smoking or smoldering. The flower of the infernal horsetail can be obtained with scissors, pruned with a working knife, and used as a lighter. It is not recommended to stand on a flower for a long time. It sets you on fire. It is not necessary to plant a plant on a bed. It also grows on an ordinary surface. A special fiber is obtained from the horsetail of hell, from which mats can then be made with a transporting effect. I'm such a kind of conveyor belt. Povelico infernal or infernal vine, a very beautiful bright red vine that grows everywhere in hell. It has properties similar to a spider web. It confuses and slows you down a lot. It's a brown, nondescript-looking grass that grows in hell. You can plant it in any untreated soil. After harvesting, the roots remain, which after some time germinate again, gives the usual fiber, ender horsetail. It grows in an ender. It can be planted on any solid surface. If you step on this pink flowering plant, it will teleport you. A carpet is made of its fibers, which has the same properties of random teleportation. Both of the following plants are varieties of infernal lianas. The first one is called the beard of the elder. It looks like this. The second one has a threatening name, which could be translated as a suffocating weed. Despite this, she has not noticed any effects yet. An analog of a deserted dead bush appeared in hell. It looks similar. It's called a petrified bush. If you step on it, it will stab you. By the way, have you noticed that the prime bark mod adds a lot to the lower world, and lagged behind is much more picturesque? Why, now you can at least live here. Well, I've told you about the plants. Now let's talk about animals. First of all, I will say that even vanilla animals with the PrimalCore mod change their size by default. First of all, you won't get skin from anyone. From animals, as well as from some mobs, skins fall out, which will still have to be processed. There are many more types of meat. Even with bears and wolves, meat falls out. But in addition to meat, bones and different types of fat also fall out. Fat can be used on fishing as bait, but more on that later. And now I'm going to tell you about the new animals. Steppe wolves spawn in small packs in the ordinary world. Very hostile, will attack mobs and players. You can't tame them. They protect their territory and will attack if you approach them. Meat, skins, and meat suitable for food. In addition, you can get a wolf's head, from which a hood is made. Wolves are very dangerous for travelers, but if you have developed enough, you can craft yourself a wolf costume like this, wearing which you will be relatively safe. Wolves won't attack you, at least not until you attack them first. But keep in mind that you must have a full set of wolf armor, otherwise the trick will not work. The hammerhead shark. A hostile mob that lives in the depths of the ocean. However, there is a tank with spawn, and you may suddenly find that such a toothy thing is floating in your lake behind the house. Firewood, skin, teeth, fins, and meat. The shark attacks everything in the water, excluding octopuses. So your water trips have now become much more dangerous. When you decide to run away from skeletons and creepers in the sea, keep in mind that it can end badly. Why shark teeth and fins are needed, I still don't know. Most likely, they are still working on them, but the meat and the skin are quite functional. Meat is good to eat, just like any other meat. Infernal Ares. These carnivorous animals spawn in hell, usually in small groups, and graze, eating hell horsetail. For the most part, they are passive. If you approach their breeding with all seriousness and caution, they will provide you with wool, meat, milk, and a whole range of byproducts. Ares are extremely sensitive to their territory and attack most of the pets they depend on, as well as wild animals, and some hostile mobs, such as zombies. Having killed their opponents, the infernal Ares will eat their meat, well or rotten, and will begin to multiply joyfully. If you make yourself a costume from the wool of hell sheep, you will be able to travel through hell more safely. By the way, there is no need to craft a hood. You can immediately put on the head of Ares. The wool of the infernal sheep has fire resistance. This does not mean that you will not receive fire damage, but as soon as you move away from the source, you will immediately stop burning. But very often we die not from the fire or lava itself, but from the fact that we did not have time to extinguish in time. If you accidentally hit at least one sheep, and the whole flock, including the lambs, will attack you, and believe me, it won't seem enough to you. After death, the infernal Ares drop skins, wool, meat suitable for food, and heads. Severed heads do not stack. To propagate, feed raw meat, rotten meat, any fish or hell horsetail, but not from the hand, but from the ground. Lambs grow rapidly from the same products. Approach one sheep twice in a row will not come out, just as a newly grown lamb will not come out. In order for a sheep to give milk, you need to first trim it and wait for it to pinch the hell horsetail. The wool will grow back, and then it will be possible to milk. So if you are going to engage in hellish sheep farming in the ordinary world, prepare a pasture with suitable grass. Hell sheep don't like water. In the rain, they begin to run restlessly in search of shelter, and at night their eyes burn. Alligators. I haven't seen where it spawns yet, presumably somewhere in the swamps or the tropics. Meat, skin, and meat. Mobs are aggressive. If you see them, save yourself or fight. Brown and black bears. Meat, skin, bones, bear fat. They will be remembered in the ordinary world, often in forests or winter biomes. Also aggressive mobs, be extremely careful with them. The infernal creeper will spawn in hell. Explodes and sets on fire. It gets damaged from water, but, as you understand, it will not be possible to pour water in hell. Shotgun powder. There are also rats and chupacabras listed on the developer's website, but they are not in the game yet. Apparently, part of the animal world is still at the stage of development or refinement. Well, so I told about animals and plants of Fashion Prime Co. Now you know which of them can serve as a food source for you. But since we are already talking about food, I must mention another method of obtaining food, namely fishing. The Primitive Foundation mod adds a new fishing mechanic to us. Now we cannot waste time sitting with a fishing rod by the pond, but craft a fish trap and go about our business. You can craft it from different woods. Crafting is simple and inexpensive. It should be installed so that at least one block of water covers the device from above, and at least several blocks of water are in front of the trap door. The trap won't work until you put the bait in there. It can be made from any fat, raw meat or fish, as well as from rotten meat. The fat is refueled as it is, and the meat or rotten meat needs to be cut with a working knife. You can throw a whole stack of bait at once, but it must be of the same type, and you will have to put one thing at a time. We put the bait with the right mouse button. Each catch consumes one bait. In addition to fish, garbage and treasures are also caught. Which items will come across depend on the biome. At least, that's what the developer claims. The fishing process is not fast, so be patient. And it's best to craft a lot of traps at once and go about your business. You can also get prey from the trap with the right mouse button. Go to the trap and click on it. If something is caught, it will appear in your inventory, and a message about the amount of remaining bait will pop up in the chat. If you want to pull out the whole trap, then right-click in the squat with an empty hand. By the way, there is a very convenient thing in our mod that checks the status of the mod's devices. In particular, if it seems to you that some device is stuck and does not work, you can restart it with this thing. It is called a debug stick, or just a stick checker. It is being crafted like this from 2 blocks of land. It works by clicking the right mouse button, in some cases in a squat. It depends on the specific device. There is no need for a preset on fish traps. If everything is in order, then after checking, a message pops up in the chat that the block is already being updated. Well, and for fans of thrills, the PrimalCore mod offers to do extreme fishing. Namely, you can fish in hell. Well, not exactly a fish, but still something edible. To do this, You will need a trap from Carfree, but the bait is the most common. So, let's start fishing. We put on a hell sheep costume, put the head in the inventory, but we put on our cool black glasses. And in this equipment, we bury moisture. Quickly set the trap and jump back out. We change the glasses on the sheep's head and get rid of it. Redive and lay the bait. After some time, we check our catch. So we caught the original infernal delicacies. Of course, it would be possible to use a fire resistance potion, but it's too simple. I recommend this type of fishing to true connoisseurs of extreme sports. Now that we have decided on the food source, let's talk about cooking. If we are talking about vanilla types of meat, then you can also cook them in a vanilla oven. If you have got something of this kind, original, then you will have to use PrimalCore devices for cooking. One of these devices is the Hibachi. Hibachi, this is a traditional Japanese mobile oven for heating and cooking. In fashion, in terms of its functionality, it is well a cross between a dryer and a stove. She has 3 options. The difference between them is only in the material of the bricks. To get such bricks, you need to either take clods of dirt or clods of terracotta, or this third kind of clods of some kind of clay, which is called Scots Sinny. The easiest thing is to make it out of a lump in the mud, since it is the most common. You will find it in large quantities near reservoirs. Dig it out, get clods of dirt. Fold them together and place them in a dry place, preferably under a canopy and near a heat source. Then the process will go faster. When the lumps dry, they will harden, and they can be extracted with a pickaxe. In this form, they fall out in a block. From these blocks, or from their derivatives, you will make your hibachi. As for terracotta and semiscota, after extracting their pamia, put them to roast in a vanilla oven like ordinary clay. You will get bricks, from which you will then lay down blocks for hibachi. You will also need a grid. You can do it like this. Well, our oven is ready. In order to cook food on a hut, you first need to fill it with coal, put food on it, and then light it. Let's try it out. Put the fuel by right-clicking on the bottom of the hibachi. It fits as much as possible like this, and will light it. You can ignite it with a lighter, and a torch, and a fiery bow, and a fiery flower. Sticks, boards, hard paraffin, or any coal are suitable as fuel. Lit hibachi consumes fuel, so if you want to save it, it's better to put out the fire. This is also done with the right mouse button. By the way, if necessary, the fuel can be pulled out. With the right mouse button on the bottom of the hibachi, you will pull out 1 unit, and if you sit down at the same time, you will get the whole one. We lay out meat, fish, chicken, or vegetables on the surface. This is also done with the right mouse button, but already on the top of the plate. You can remove the meat by right-clicking again. By the way, if you want to check the condition of the hibachi's work with a stick checker, then you should certainly put it in a squat on the top of the stove, where the meat lies. Otherwise, just extinguish the fire in the stove. The working surface is 2 by 2, so you can fry only 4 pieces at a time. But how entourage it looks! It's nice to sit and watch how the meat is cooked on the tile. Such a cozy atmosphere is created. As I have already told you, the meat of the PrimalCore mod is added a lot. There is horse meat, llama meat, alligator meat, and bear meat. Yes, what is there just not? Even clownfish and pufferfish or globryuka can be cooked. On his page, the developer writes that in the future some hibachi recipes will have a burnt version. For example, there will be a chance of getting a burnt steak, but for now, This has not yet been applied in the working version of the mod. From what you can currently configure in the Hibachi configurations, this is the time of burning fuel and cooking. Another way of cooking is drying. This is done with the help of dryers. Dryers can be crafted from different woods, which is very pleasing, because they will not spoil the design of the room for you by not combining well with your wallpaper. Their crafting is not complicated, so you can quite afford dryers even in the early stages of the game. They take up to 4 items to dry at a time. The output can be either successfully dried products or its spoiled, rotten version. The probability of successful drying is influenced by environmental factors. For example, darkness, rain, or the installation of dryers in close proximity to water will increase the likelihood of damage to your products. Well, a source of heat, light, and the absence of modifiers that affect rotting, on the contrary, will increase the chance of successful drying. Positive modifiers do not overlap. The dryer either has an increased chance of success or not. So, what can we dry on the dryers? For example, all types of fish and some types of meat. They can simply be spread out on the dryer, and after a while, they will turn into dried. And you can also make salted dried fish or meat. For comparison, just dried cod restores 2.5 bones of hunger, and salted and dried cod restores 3 bones of hunger. For this process, you will need to get some salt somewhere. There are several types of salt, but it is all suitable for salting food. These 2 types of salt are generated in the ordinary world. Helite is table salt, and this is the name of which translates as on the throne or on 3. Hellender has its own kinds of salt, too. Of these, void salt is generated in the vendor, and fire salt in hell, most often in the middle of lava lakes. Salt is generated by conventional deposits. So if you stumble upon one of these, then immediately type, because then, when you urgently need it, it may not be nearby. The easiest way to find a deposit is in deserts or mountains with dried salt lakes. But let's say we found salt. We caught some fish. We put the fish with salt and get this salted fish. Now all we have to do is spread it out on the dryer with the right mouse button and wait for it to dry. The process is not fast, so dry a lot at once. If you messed up and the products still came out rotten, do not worry. Take your working knife and cut the rotten fish again for bait. By the way, you can also remove products from the dryer with the right mouse button. It is necessary to check the state of the process with a stick checker on the side of the dryer so as not to accidentally remove the products and reset the drying progress. On the dryers, the stick checker also shows a timer for each of the 4 cells of the dryer. When the timer reaches 0, the products are ready. What else can you do with dryers? In fact, they play a very important role in the PrimalCore fashion, since the extraction of some vital resources is impossible without their participation. For example, getting skin. Also, the dryer gives us an alternative craft paper. By the way, old cottonwood bricks of non-cattle clay can be obtained not only by firing, but also on a dryer. There are several settings available for dryers in the configs. In particular, you can determine the cooking time of the product and the chance of a spoiled version falling out. The next device I'm going to tell you about is a boiler, a tricky and much-needed device for us. Contact with the boiler, as well as with some other devices of the PrimalCore mod, takes place in the world. To begin with, let's look at the crafting of the boiler and the covers for it. In general, there is nothing complicated here, except that you need a piece of iron, which, thanks to fashion, is valued almost at its weight in gold, especially at the initial stages of the game. Well, let's say we have created a boiler. Now we need to install it. In order for the boiler to work, it must be located above a heat source, lava, burning hellstone, magma, or something like that. In the gap between the heat source and the boiler, there may be a space of 1 block. There you can place, for example, a flap that allows you to disconnect the boiler from heating if necessary. Here we installed the boiler, poured some water into it. Now we have to wait for it to boil, and There are two ways to check it. The first is by eye. You will see white particles above the boiler when it warms up. The second and most reliable ladle. To check the condition of the boiler with a ladle, right-click on the side wall of the boiler. We get a message in the chat about the heating temperature, the amount of liquid, in this case water, and the contents of the boiler. The contents of the boiler are indicated in green, finished products, orange, and heating red. When the boiler has warmed up to the value of 1, it means that it is hot, just very hot, and the cooking process will already begin in it. By the way, craft ladles are like this. Bones, lacquered wood, carpharia wood, and ironwood are suitable. What can we cook in the cauldron? Yes, a lot of things, from cooking to leather processing, wood varnishing, and so on. Depending on what we are going to cook, we may need various liquids besides water. Let's try to cook eggs first. We throw eggs into the water like that. And now our boiler shows that there is water in it in such a volume, eggs in such an amount, and the water is heated to 1. That is, the process is underway. We can still clarify the state of the process with our stick checker, clicking in a squat on the side wall of the boiler, and we see that the block is updated and the timer is running. When the timer reaches 0, we will get 1 unit of finished product, that is, a boiled egg. This sound means that at least 1 unit of production is ready. You can get it with a ladle by right-clicking on the upper surface of the boiler where the liquid is visible. If you have changed your mind about cooking eggs and want to get them, there is no problem. Also, right-click the ladle on the upper surface to extract them. As food is cooked in the boiler or any other process, the liquid from the boiler will be consumed. This expense depends on the specific recipe. So, as necessary, it is possible and necessary to pour liquid into the boiler. If you need to replace the liquid in the boiler, then you can scoop out the liquid that is there at the moment with a bucket and bottles. You can simply destroy the boiler, and the liquid will disappear, and the contents of the boiler will fall out into the world. If you decide to simply destroy the boiler, do not forget to close the grate under it, otherwise it may fall into the fire. It is not recommended to leave unused items in the boiler for a long time, because there is a risk that they will burn out there into carbon deposits, a waste product that, of course, can still be used, but not very necessary, and certainly not the one that you originally planned. It is also better to remove this very carbon or slag from the boiler because it accumulates there, and in general, it is better if there is nothing in the boiler, except for those items that you are processing at the moment, because items that do not fit the recipe will turn into slag in the boiler. Note that the boiler has 4 slots for input products and only 2 for output. To protect the contents of the boiler from the external environment, you can cover it with a lid. When closed, you can move the boiler from one place to another while its contents will not be lost. This is done with the right mouse button in the squat. There are some settings in the configurations for the boiler. You can change the heating and cooling time of the boiler, the chance with which carbon deposits form in the boiler, the chance with which the boiler begins to smoke. There is also a recipe modifier for the boiler in the configuration settings. And finally, it is possible to determine whether the boiler will accept any items or only those that are suitable for the recipe. By the way, in the boiler you can get water from any kind of ice or snow, as well as lava from stones. This can be very useful, and in general, the boiler has many different useful recipes. As I said, liquids from the boiler can be poured for storage. But where should we put them? Is it really necessary to fill the inventory with buckets and bottles? And here it is not. The PrimalCore mod adds us these wonderful barrels. In addition to the fact that they look beautiful and come in different colors, barrels have very useful functionality. Up to 8 buckets of liquid can fit into each of the barrels. But in addition to buckets, you can pour and take liquids with bottles. If you cover the barrel with a lid, the liquid will not be lost when transferring the barrel, which you will agree is very convenient. Let's take a closer look at them. Crafting barrels like this. As you can see, it's simple, but to create a lid, you will have to make a tool, a saw. But I have already talked about it. By the way, barrels that are open and exposed on the street collect rainwater, which is especially useful for those who play on assemblies, where water sources are not endless, and water is a very valuable resource. But don't try to fool the system. This theme doesn't work in the desert. I've already tried it. In the desert during the rain, you will not get conclusions, but in snowy biomes, water accumulates in barrels during a snowfall, which is quite logical. So this detail is well refined. To close the barrel, right-click while holding the lid in your hand. The lid must necessarily be the same color as the barrel. You can pick it up by sitting down and right-clicking on the side wall. You can remove the lid if you right-click again, this time in a squat, but you need to hit the lid. If you tap on the barrel, it doesn't matter with the right or left button, you will hear a dull sound. It can be used to determine whether there is liquid in the barrel or it is empty. Well, now I'm going to tell you about the liquids added by the Primal mod. Some of them are of natural origin. They can be found somewhere in the world. Others have to be created. Now I'm going to tell you about each of them. The milk of the infernal sheep can be obtained by milking this very infernal sheep. It is not consumed in its raw form. It is used for various crafts in the boiler. The milk of the infernal sheep can be poured next to the lava and obsidian will turn out. But first it will all blaze like a lake of fire. Here is such a warm, pleasing to the eye picture awaits us. It is not necessary to extinguish the source. It will burn itself out. Paraffin is steamed in a cauldron based on the milk of the infernal sheep, from fire salt and pieces of hardened paraffin. If you spill a bucket of paraffin, it can explode, especially if there is a heat source nearby. It explodes instantly in hell. It is best to pour it in a barrel and set a trap. Tannin or tannin. Artificially manufactured solution is used for leather dressing. It is made in a boiler, urus. With the help of this substance, you can process wooden products, in other words, cover them with varnish. It is made in a boiler. Brine is obtained by mixing water and salt in a boiler in the proportion of 32 units of salt per bucket of water, needed for a number of crafts. You are a target or dirty water. It is obtained by dissolving in water the very sediment or scale that is formed in the boiler and is a waste product. There seem to be no recipes with these dirty waters. I've tried swimming and diving in these slops. It doesn't look so scary inside a slop puddle, and it doesn't do any harm. However, it does have one function, namely the creation of blocks of a certain type. Bitumen. It is generated in the ordinary world and in hell, but it can be boiled in a cauldron. Simple bitumen simply spreads when poured, and boiling lights up and burns out. So far, it is needed only to make such a glass-like substance out of quartz crystals, from which lenses are then made, from which, in turn, such stylish sunglasses are made. Basalt magma is needed to create various beautiful stone blocks. You can make this liquid either in a boiler or by breaking a magma block with a hammer. We have sorted out the liquids. We will continue to review the storage methods in the fashion of PrimalCore. In addition to barrels, the mod has another kind of storage of its own boxes. They have the same number of slots in their inventory as vanilla single chests, but they differ favorably from these very chests in a number of indicators. First of all, it is the safety of inventory. If you want to pick up a box, then its contents will not fall to the ground, but will remain in the inventory. In order to pick it up, you need to sit down and click the mouse button. It doesn't matter if it's right or left. However, if you do not want the boxes to keep inventory, then this function can also be disabled in configurations. Boxes also have better explosion resistance compared to chests. And, of course, they can be made of different wood, which, of course, is very important for those who like to create beautiful interiors. The developer is thinking about making it possible in the future to create a multi-block structure from boxes with an increased inventory size of 2 by 2 by 2. He also wants to make locks and/or traps that lock the box from the encroachment of undesirable personalities when playing in multiplayer. By the way, the crafting of boxes is like this. Shelves are also offered to us in a variety of color options, from any vanilla, wood, and our own PrimalCore wood. Their craft is like this. As you can see, it is inexpensive, so shelves as a kind of storage become available to us at quite early stages of the game. Their inventory has only 4 slots, but you can immediately see what is lying there, and it can be very convenient. Your sword broke, let's say, and you do not rummage through the drawers in search of a replacement, but immediately took it off the shelf and ran on. Shelves in the thickness of the floor of the block. Accordingly, they can be placed either on the near part of the block or on the far side. That is, it can be made so that they either protrude slightly forward or are sunk closer to the wall. They don't have an interface. Items can be taken and put directly. You can put it with the right mouse button and take any one, right or left. You can put so many items at once. This is done the same way as with one item. But if you want to pick up so many items, you have to sit down and click. Again, it doesn't matter, right or left mouse button. The PrimalCore mod adds 2 new types of crafting tables to us at once. I have already told you about one of them at the very beginning. The second type of workbench is a semi-block panel. Unlike the first workbench, this one does not have its own shelves, but it is more compact. His craft looks like this, and you can also put this workbench next to a chest or a pro anchor box, and the inventory of the box will be available directly from the workbench. The surface of the semi-block crafting table also preserves and displays the items placed there. The mod developers have tried to make sure that we have a lot of ladders for every taste. Unlike vanilla ladders, PrimalCore wooden ladders can stand without leaning on the wall. They only need the first block for support. They can be installed on the floor or ceiling, and further above or below, one by one. However, there is only one working surface for such a ladder, so it will not be possible to climb it from the backside. So what? It's still great, and you can craft yourself such a ladder like this. These stairs are especially steep because they can be extended. We take a stack of stairs, install the first one, and then right-click on it. The ladders begin to grow upwards, and if the free space is not at the top, but at the bottom, then the length will increase downwards. Ladders are also quite easily removed with the right mouse button in the squat. Unfortunately, they are removed one by one, without destroying the entire structure. So if you literally built a ladder to the sky, and then decided to disassemble, starting with the lower blocks, then the rest will hang in the air. Well, we have already crashed a little. We do not live in a dugout, but in a house. We cook food in a hut, and we even have a pot. It's time we did something more serious. Our further development is impossible without the skin, which participates in a number of crafts. However, until now, only animal skins have fallen out to us on hunting. What to do? We'll have to do the leather dressing. To begin with, we will collect all our skins and peel them from the wool with a working knife in our craft cell. We get different amounts of raw hides from different types of hides. We need to salt these raw skins with any salt first. After that, we lay them out on the dryers and wait until they dry out. You already know about drying modifiers. Screw up the process, get damaged products. While our skins are drying, we will prepare for the next stage of treatment, tanning. To do this, we will need to prepare a tannin solution in the boiler. To make it, we will need a stone. You can get it as follows. First of all, we need a mortar. The mortar fractum is not complicated. You will also need pebbles. We can get them with a hammer. We will also need the bark that we have left over from when we made coal. And putting it all together in a workbench, we get more tannin. We throw it into the boiler in the proportion of 4 pieces per bucket of water. The boiler fits 4 buckets, so we throw in 16 comedy pieces. When the solution is ready, it will change its color. To make sure, right-click the ladle on the side of the boiler. You see, the water has turned into a tanning solution. Now we throw in the already dried, prepared for tanning skin, and wait. As the solution is processed, it will be consumed. When the skin is smothered, you can pull it out with a ladle by right-clicking on the top of the boiler where the liquid is visible, but it is still not ready. For full readiness, we will have to hang it on the dryer again. And only after it dries again, you will get a ready-made skin that can be used in crafting. I saw a little trick from foreign YouTubers, which I want to share with you. If you have already crafted so much that you can afford to spend iron, then make a funnel. We put it under the boiler and put it in the box. Then the finished products will go straight there. The funnel will not interfere with the heating of the boiler. It will also not pick up items intended for processing in the boiler and will not pull out the scale. You will still have to delete it manually. Since you and I have already developed quite a lot, we probably went for obsidian and climbed into hell, dug up diamonds and God knows what else. We can also create cooler tools. Well, you know, and you can't stick them on any stick. Here you need a special stick, and for it, we will need a varnish called Urus. And now we are going to cook it with you. First, we need to prepare the appropriate solution in the boiler. For him, we make this mass of some types of herbs and flowers in a mortar. The proportion is 4 pieces for 1 bucket of water. That is 16 for a full boiler. When the liquid has darkened, we can throw sticks there. And in general, that's it. Just waiting for them to be varnished. Why do we bother with these Primal Cow tools at all? After all, vanilla crafts have not been cancelled. The fact is that the mod is not yet fully ready, and in theory, vanilla crafts should be turned off. In addition, in the Keats Forge crafting, the crafting of tools, although more troublesome, but significantly saves resources. And besides, Prime Cow Opal instruments are better than vanilla analogs, and PrimalCore also allows you to craft good tools from alternative materials. For example, if you don't have diamonds, but you have emeralds, then you can make tools out of them. In terms of quality, they will be similar to diamond ones, and obsidian ones will only be slightly inferior to them. By the way, you can even make yourself an armor from obsidian, which is also only slightly inferior to a diamond set. Crafting it is not to say that it is quite simple, but it is worth it. Moreover, we have an alternative way of obtaining obsidians in a cauldron. The mod also adds 3 types of bows made of different materials, but I find the PrimalCore arrows more interesting. These, for example, put wooden non-barite and radon torches. The paraffin arrow explodes the target and sets everything on fire. Personally, I liked it. The bitumen boom pours boiling bitumen, which then catches fire. That is, it is possible to arrange fires. The arrow with a water bottle, as I assume, is intended for creatures who are afraid of water, for example, infernal creepers or Ares, and it can also extinguish fire, which can be very useful. In addition, there are also quartz and ironwood arrows. As I understand it, this is just an alternative crafting of arrows. I suggest you experiment with the power of bows and arrows yourself. Since we're talking about weapons, I'll tell you a couple more interesting things that the PrimalCore mod adds. The first of them is the trap stakes, a truly useful survival thing. Crafting them is simple, like this. They cause various damage, which varies from 2 indicators the height of the fall and the surface on which these stakes are installed. For example, if you install stakes on wool, they will not kill the victim, but will leave the floor of the heart. This is convenient for creating, for example, experience farms. But these stakes, located on gold, mercilessly kill. On magma, they will also set fire to it. So with such stakes, your base will be completely safe. Another invention of the mod developers that thrilled me personally is the disruptor. It's quite difficult to craft, but it's worth it. This wonderful device partly replaces dynamite for us, and partly it is even cooler than dynamite. Let's install it to see how it works. First of all, we need to fill the barrel with fuel, namely araffina, but you cannot pour a whole barrel, a maximum of half, that is, 4 buckets. Then we squat and right-click, holding this device in our hand. The lid closed. Now, if someone touches the barrel, like this with the left mouse button, everything around will blow up into the air. Well, we have studied almost all the technologies. Only metalworking remained. In principle, the Prime mod adds a large range of metals, including metals such as copper, bronze, aluminum, lead, vanadium, zinc, and many others. But I have not seen the ores themselves in the world, and it is impossible to work with most of them yet. However, there are several ores from which we can get some types of iron and steel. However, if you meet these ores in the world at the initial stages of the game, do not rush to rejoice, because vanilla ingots in a conventional oven will not be obtained from them anyway. These ores look like this. As you can see, these are different types of earth and loam and stones with the inclusion of iron or magnetite. It's not ore that falls out of them, but something so amorphous. As I said, you won't get anything out of them in a regular oven. But there is another stove. It is called a domnitsa, or a screaming horn. There is very little information about this device, from what I've been able to find out. The Scream Forge is a kind of foundry, but unlike the foundries from other mods, this one doesn't have an interface, and interaction with it takes place in the world. Also, the fuel for the furnace is not added separately to the kindling, but takes part in the smelting recipe. There are 3 types of screaming horns, but as far as I understand, the difference is solely in the material of manufacture. In short, from what it turned out to be more convenient for you, and do it with that. Here are the crafts. The peculiarity of creating a nickname is that you do not need to craft the lid separately. It is made in one set with your forge. In order to find out the existing recipes, it is most convenient to use the. But just in case, I'll show you what it gives out. Let's try to melt out of these most amorphous pieces, for example, Indian Damascus. To do this, we will need the highest quality coal. You will have to extract pieces of magnetite from, or somewhere in the world, any ash and lime dust that can be obtained by breaking the corresponding blocks with a hammer, like the boiler. There are 4 input slots and 2 output slots. We throw all the ingredients into it, as shown in the recipe. Then you need to close the lid and set it on fire. I personally checked the readiness status with this omnipotent stick. You need to sit down and right-click on the side wall of the mountain, holding a stick in your hand. A message will pop up to you. If it's red, it means something is wrong. Most likely, you just didn't light the bugle. And then, there is a countdown of readiness. Do not rush to take out the products. As soon as it reaches 0, most likely it is not ready yet. If you have several pieces to melt, then wait for the red dialog, which again tells you that the block is no longer updated. That's when we break the domnitsa and get what we wanted. By the way, if you break a still burning forge, you will light up yourself. So we got the Indian Damascus. At the moment, only one tool is available from it, the same machete that we have already seen. However, there are more recipes with metals in Kitsch with Fortune Craft. Besides, I'm sure that all this pile of metals here is not accidental. Most likely, the developers have some ideas, they just haven't had time to implement them yet. In addition to the Kriknitsa metals, you can make some other recipes, but you can easily figure them out by analogy. Just open J, and you'll see everything. And finally, I'll tell you about some of the blocks added by the PrimalCore mod, as well as their derivatives. But first, it should be mentioned that PrimalCore changes the physics of some blocks. For example, if you fall on blocks of glass, they will break. However, they will soften your fall. The same applies to foliage and wool. Well, it remains to look at the blocks themselves. Reinforced stone. It is made of vanilla stone and obsidian. As a result, out of 8 stones and 1 obsidian, only 4 pieces are obtained, but they have an interesting texture, and they can be painted in different colors. And I will undertake to tell you exactly its strength. But in terms of the duration of cutting down, it seems to me that it is equal to obsidian. Explosions of TNT and paraffin do not destroy the reinforced stone. And this, in my opinion, is a very important property. The mod adds many different gems, most of which are generated in the world. But for some there are ways to obtain artificially. From all these stones, you can make beautiful blocks, including carved ones. Let's look at the example of an ordinary stone. The crafts for his carved versions are like this. For the rest of the stones, the carved versions are crafted similarly. An ordinary stone can be created artificially if basalt magma is mixed with wastewater. It is almost indistinguishable from vanilla stone. Its texture is just a little lighter. Sarsen stone. It is generated in the ordinary world, and basalt magma plus water or bitumen is being crafted. Or you can spill basalt magma in the rain. I can't translate the name of this stone to you even approximately. Let it be ortho. Generated in the world, met for example, in deserts. Basalt magma plus brine is being crafted. Green slate. I haven't met anyone in the world, although I'm almost sure that there should be somewhere, but it can definitely be crafted. Basalt magma plus tannin. Blue slate. Basalt magma and urus are being crafted. Volcanic mudstone. It is generated in hell and can also be crafted if you pour Ares milk and basalt magma. A dried up stone. It arises from the contact of the milk of the infernal Ares and water, or any suitable liquid, including sewage, brine, from Russia or tannin. You can just pour Ares milk in the rain, and the dried stone burns, as if it is immobile. Of the interesting blocks you can see in the world, the Stetsu sand, from which iron glass is obtained. This glass does not break when falling, and is quite resistant to explosions. In fact, there are still a lot of blocks and items in the PrimalCore fashion, but I think you will be able to figure them out on your own. I strongly advise you to install GI to spy on crafts. Well, that's it for today. I hope the PrimalCore mod made an impression on you. If so, please like it. I will know that it is worth shooting about the coupons for this mod. Write your comments. They always make me very happy and motivate me to shoot new videos. See you soon, dear friends. Bye-bye.